You've probably noticed it too. Men aren't chasing relationships the way they used to. They're not dreaming about forever. They're calculating the risk of heartbreak. Because today, loyalty isn't assumed anymore. It's doubted, tested, and often proven false. And no matter how good she seems, there's a part of you that wonders, can I really trust her? This isn't paranoia. It's pattern recognition. You've seen too much. The lies, the games, the excuses dressed as empowerment. But here's the truth no one's telling you. Loyalty didn't disappear. It just changed form. And unless you understand how, you'll keep losing to the same cycle over and over again. Let's break down why modern men are quietly giving up on faithfulness and what it really says about the world we're living in. We're living through a moment where men are walking away, not because they can't love, but because they no longer believe loyalty exists. You can feel it everywhere, in the way men talk, date, or stop trying altogether. It's not loneliness they fear anymore. It's betrayal. It's the quiet realization that in a world where attention is currency, commitment has lost its value. Today, a man can give everything: stability, consistency, presence, and still feel replaceable within seconds of a swipe. Modern dating has become a marketplace of options, and loyalty has turned into an outdated luxury. But before you point fingers, understand this. We're not here to blame women. We're here to decode what's really happening. Because when loyalty collapses, it's never just about infidelity. It's about the psychology that makes it possible. So, let's break down the 5 psychological reasons why men stop believing in women's loyalty and what this truth really reveals about us. Number 1, the hidden lies. When truth becomes too expensive. Imagine this. A man spends 20 years raising a child, teaching, providing, loving, only to find out one day that the child was never his. Not by blood, not by truth, just by illusion. That moment doesn't just destroy trust in one woman, it rewires how he sees every woman after her. Because betrayal built on deception doesn't just break hearts, it corrodes reality. When truth becomes too expensive, people start living on lies. Many women lie not out of cruelty, but out of fear. Fear of losing the image they've built, the comfort they've created, or the version of themselves they want others to see. The lie becomes a shield, a way to survive the consequences of their own choices. But here's what they don't realize. Every lie told to protect themselves kills something sacred in the man who believed them. Men don't shatter because of what happened. They shatter because they realize how long it was hidden. It's the duration that hurts, the performance, the way someone can look you in the eye every morning, say, "I love you," and still guard a secret that rewrites your life. That's not just infidelity, that's emotional homicide. Women often underestimate the psychological cost of deception. For men, loyalty isn't measured by perfection. It's measured by truth. The ability to face consequences, to own mistakes, to say, "I did this, and it was wrong." But when truth dies, loyalty dies with it. And once a man experiences that, once he sees how easily a truth can be buried, how comfortably a lie can live beside him, he stops believing in honesty altogether. He stops asking. He stops trusting. He stops investing. Because in his mind, every smile could be a cover. Every apology could be a script. Psychologically, this reaction is self-defense. It's the mind's way of saying, never again. The trauma of deceit reshapes attachment. It turns affection into suspicion, curiosity into caution, and love into risk management. When a man loses faith in truth, he no longer sees relationships as something to build. He sees them as something to survive. And from that point on, emotional distance becomes his only safety net. But here's the paradox. The woman who lies usually believes she's protecting him. She tells herself, he doesn't need to know. It'll only hurt him. What she fails to see is that the lie doesn't just protect the present, it poisons the future. Because once the lie comes out, and it always does, the damage can't be undone. The trust that took years to build evaporates in seconds. And even if forgiveness comes, belief never does. Once a lie becomes her comfort, truth becomes his punishment. And that's how loyalty dies. Not in the moment of betrayal, but in the years of silence that came before it. Number 2, the challenge response. When boundaries are mocked. There's a quiet shift that happens in modern relationships. A man sets a boundary, maybe about how his woman dresses, how late she stays out, or who she entertains in her messages. And almost instantly, he's labeled insecure, controlling, or fragile. But here's what's really happening beneath that accusation. When a man enforces a boundary, he's not trying to dominate. He's trying to protect the relationship, the respect, and the woman herself. Yet modern culture has twisted that act of leadership into an attack on freedom. This is where the emotional fracture begins. Every time a man's attempt to lead is mocked, something inside him shuts down. He learns that expressing discomfort isn't strength, it's weakness in her eyes, that speaking up won't be heard, it'll be weaponized. So he grows silent, not because he doesn't care, but because he realizes that silence costs less than confrontation. Women call this silence emotional distance. Men call it survival. The truth is, boundaries are not cages. They're the structure that keeps loyalty intact. But in today's world, boundaries are seen as restrictions, not protection. The feminine ego often mistakes leadership for control. It rebels against direction, not because it's wrong, but because it exposes accountability. Psychologically, this is known as a defensive ego response. When faced with correction, the ego feels threatened. Instead of reflecting, it retaliates. The woman pushes back, not to protect her freedom, but to avoid the discomfort of self-awareness. And that's the turning point. Because every time she mocks the boundary instead of respecting it, she unknowingly tells the man, "Your protection doesn't matter here." After enough repetitions, he stops offering it. It's a dangerous trade. Once a man stops enforcing boundaries, resentment takes their place. He no longer corrects what hurts him, he collects it. He builds a quiet wall of emotional distance, brick by brick, reaction by reaction. Modern relationships fail not because men don't lead, but because leadership is now labeled as control. A woman who cannot respect guidance will eventually lose the man who provides it. Not because he stopped loving her, but because he stopped seeing himself in the relationship. Loyalty thrives on mutual respect, but when respect turns into mockery, loyalty becomes performance. She plays the part, but the connection dies. And deep down, the man begins to associate vulnerability with danger. So he adapts. He stops explaining, stops correcting, stops showing the parts of him that care too deeply. And what she calls emotional unavailability is actually the funeral of his last attempt to lead. Because every time a man's boundary is mocked, a part of his trust dies with it. And once trust goes, loyalty never stays long after. Number 3, the workplace temptation. When proximity breeds illusion. There's a quiet chemistry that forms long before anything physical happens. It starts with a laugh in the hallway, a shared complaint about a coworker, or those casual check-ins that slowly turn into daily conversations. And before she even realizes it, the line between connection and temptation has blurred. Workplace intimacy isn't always about desire. It's about exposure. When a woman spends 40 hours a week around another man, she's living in emotional proximity. The brain doesn't separate professional from personal. It simply follows patterns of familiarity. And familiarity, over time, becomes attraction. Psychologists call this the familiarity principle. The more we're exposed to someone, the more we begin to like them. Add compliments, humor, and shared goals, and suddenly there's an emotional bond forming. One her partner at home doesn't even know exists. It always begins innocently. He just gets me. We're just friends. It's harmless. But what feels harmless in the moment is the most dangerous illusion of all. Because every affair begins with an innocent conversation, one that crosses no visible line, but weakens every invisible one. For a man watching from the outside, it's a nightmare of uncertainty. He knows attention is the modern currency of affection. He knows how easily connection builds where consistency fades. And he also knows the truth. No relationship can survive unchecked exposure to new desire. Women often underestimate how powerful emotional attention can be. The body follows the mind. The moment she starts confiding in another man, she starts disconnecting from the one at home. Emotional infidelity is still infidelity. It doesn't need a bed to exist. It just needs consistency. Modern workplaces are breeding grounds for this. Long hours, shared stress, mutual validation, all perfect conditions for an emotional substitute to form. And when that bond deepens, loyalty erodes quietly behind smiles and professionalism. The tragedy isn't just the betrayal itself. It's how predictable it has become. Men see the pattern. They've watched it happen too often to believe they're exceptions. That's why modern men hesitate to commit. Not because they hate women, but because they've seen too much proof that temptation never sleeps. Psychologically, men interpret opportunity as risk. In a world where women are constantly surrounded by options, at work, online, everywhere, the very idea of exclusivity feels fragile. So, they protect themselves the only way they know how, by not believing in it at all. The reality is simple. Temptation doesn't need darkness, it just needs repetition. The more often she sees him, laughs with him, shares pieces of herself, the closer she moves to crossing a line she swore she'd never touch. Not all women fall for it, but enough do for men to stop believing it can't happen. And that's what destroys their faith. Not one act of betrayal, but the endless proximity that makes it possible. Because loyalty doesn't die from seduction. It dies from exposure, one conversation at a time. Number 4, the comfort corruption, when stability turns into boredom. There's a dangerous point in every relationship where peace turns into routine, and routine turns into emotional decay. At first, she wanted nothing more than a stable life, a man who's consistent, grounded, reliable. But once she gets it, something shifts. The excitement fades, and what used to make her feel safe starts making her feel trapped. That's the paradox of comfort. The more predictable you become, the less visible you feel. It's not that she stops loving you, she stops feeling you. And when a woman stops feeling, she starts seeking. This is where the silent corruption begins. She's not chasing another man at first. She's chasing the version of herself that used to feel alive. The thrill, the uncertainty, the validation, all the sensations that stability slowly erased. She'll call it missing the spark. But what she's really missing is the chaos that once made her heart race. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation, the human tendency to normalize comfort. What once felt special becomes standard. And when there's no emotional contrast left, the mind craves new stimulation. For men, peace is the reward. For many women, it's the beginning of restlessness. The irony? The same consistency she once begged for becomes the reason she detaches. She starts scrolling more, dressing differently, flirting subtly, not because she's unhappy, but because she's bored. And boredom is the breeding ground for betrayal. A man who works himself to exhaustion to keep her secure doesn't see it coming. He believes that providing stability guarantees loyalty. But emotional loyalty isn't built on comfort. It's built on curiosity. And once she stops being curious about him, she'll start being curious about someone else. This is why men feel blindsided when relationships fall apart. They were building safety while she was searching for stimulation. They were protecting what she already had while she was longing for what she didn't. It's not evil. It's psychology. Comfort kills tension, and tension is the fuel of desire. Without it, connection becomes companionship. Predictable, peaceful, and numb. You see, for men, comfort equals success. For women, it can quietly feel like the end of the story. That's when she starts rewriting the script, looking for something that makes her feel wanted, seen, or dangerous again. And the tragedy is that she'll risk everything stable for something that feels new, even if it's not real. The truth is simple. The safer she feels, the more invisible you become. Not because she stopped valuing you, but because comfort numbs perception. It makes her forget the cost of what she has, until she's at risk of losing it. So when men say they don't believe in women's loyalty anymore, it's not because of chaos. It's because even peace isn't safe. Because in today's world, love doesn't die from conflict. It dies from comfort. Number 5. The transparency test. When openness feels like a threat. It usually begins with something small. A man asks to see his partner's phone, not to control her, but to calm the unease that's been gnawing at him for weeks. She pauses. Her tone shifts. Suddenly, he's the villain in a story he didn't even know existed. You don't trust me? Those 4 words turn the entire situation upside down. What started as a request for honesty becomes an accusation of insecurity. He's not searching for evidence of betrayal. He's searching for peace of mind. But the more he asks, the more she hides. The more he tries to understand, the more defensive she becomes. This is what psychologists call the secrecy defense mechanism. When someone feels that their privacy is being invaded, they protect it, sometimes even when there's nothing to hide. For women, privacy feels like identity. For men, transparency feels like love. And that's where the disconnect begins. Men interpret openness as safety. If she has nothing to hide, why not show me? Women interpret it as invasion. If you trusted me, why would you need to see? 2 truths that can't coexist without friction. The irony is painful. The more he needs reassurance, the more her walls rise. The more she guards her phone, her messages, her past, the more convinced he becomes that there's something inside worth guarding. And whether there is or not, the damage is already done. Loyalty isn't always proven by exposure, but secrecy always plants a seed of doubt. Once doubt enters a man's mind, it grows like mold in the dark. Every notification becomes a trigger, every unanswered text a question mark. He doesn't want to live suspiciously, but he also can't unsee what he's felt before, the moment when blind trust turned him into a fool. For women, this defense feels harmless. I just want some space. But what she calls space, he experiences as distance. And distance is the death of connection. It makes him watch his own relationship from the outside, like an uninvited guest in a life he helped build. The sad truth. Most men don't need proof of loyalty. They need the feeling of it. The small signs of openness that whisper, "You're safe here." But when those vanish, he withdraws into silence. He doesn't argue. He observes. He doesn't accuse. He adapts. And once he adapts, the relationship starts dying quietly. Secrecy isn't always about cheating. It's about control. The need to own your narrative, to stay unexposed. But love cannot exist beside self-protection, because love, by nature, is exposure. When 2 people protect themselves more than they protect the bond, loyalty has no air to breathe. That's why men stop believing in loyalty, not because they caught someone lying, but because transparency itself became a threat. And once honesty feels dangerous, the relationship is already over. Number 6. The emotional realization. When the problem isn't them, it's the belief itself. At some point, every man who's been hurt comes to a quiet realization. It's not just women he stopped trusting, it's love itself. He doesn't believe in loyalty anymore because he started believing in guarantees. And in a world built on temptation, guarantees don't exist. Faith in loyalty dies the moment you demand proof of it, because proof only exists after trust has already been broken. The truth is, men try to love safely. They want certainty before surrender. But love doesn't operate on contracts. It operates on choice. Every day, every moment, people choose loyalty or they don't. And that choice will never belong to you. So when a man says, "I'll never trust again," what he's really saying is, "I'll never risk again." But here's the paradox. You can't experience loyalty without risk. You can't demand emotional safety and still expect connection to feel alive. Women fail. Men fail. Humans fail. But the ones who learn don't chase control anymore. They chase clarity. They stop asking, "Can she be loyal?" and start asking, "Can I remain grounded if she's not?" That's where strength is rebuilt. Not in controlling outcomes, but in mastering reaction. Because emotional power doesn't come from predicting betrayal. It comes from knowing it can't destroy you anymore. When you rebuild trust in yourself, no one's betrayal defines you. You no longer interpret deceit as proof of your weakness, but as evidence of their character. And from that point, loyalty stops being something you beg for. It becomes something you attract. You can't rebuild trust in women until you rebuild it in yourself. Because the moment you do, loyalty stops being your fear and becomes your standard. So, what do all these reasons reveal? Not that women are incapable of loyalty, but that men have stopped believing loyalty can survive in a world built to destroy it. The truth isn't that love is dead. It's that trust has become too expensive for people who no longer value its cost. Loyalty today isn't about who stays, it's about who chooses to. And choice only means something when freedom exists. You can't chain someone to faithfulness, you can only inspire it. That's the difference between control and influence, between fear and respect. The 5 truths you just heard aren't meant to make you colder. They're meant to make you clear. Because clarity is power. When you understand how betrayal works, the lies, the mockery, the temptations, the comfort, the secrecy, you stop reacting blindly. You stop asking, "Why did she do this?" and start asking, "Why did I ignore the signs?" Men lose control, not when they get betrayed, but when they let betrayal define them. The real mastery is emotional discipline, the ability to stay grounded, observant, and untouchable. The man who knows his worth doesn't chase loyalty. He commands it by the standards he lives by. So, if you've been broken, stop trying to rebuild what broke you. Rebuild you. Rebuild your focus, your frame, your sense of peace. Because once your foundation is steady, betrayal becomes noise, not a storm. Loyalty isn't proven by her actions alone. It's sustained by your standards. And the moment you stop negotiating those standards, you stop bleeding for people who never planned to stay. Don't become colder. Become clearer. Because the man who understands loyalty never begs for it. He sets the tone, and the world adjusts. If this message hit you, don't just leave it here. Comment your thoughts below. Your story might be the wake-up call another man needs to hear. Hit the like button, subscribe, and share this with someone who's been too quiet for too long. Because in a world where loyalty is rare, awareness is your protection, and self-control is your power.